Can the difference between October glory and September collapse be hidden in a minor league contract? There's a simmering frustration that every true baseball fan understands. Watching your team lose not because the stars failed, but because the depth evaporated when it mattered most. It's the kind of gut-wrenching reality that keeps general managers awake at night and sends fan bases spiraling into what-if scenarios that haunt entire winters. The Toronto Blue Jays just made a move that won't generate fireworks or ESPN breaking news alerts. They signed Rodolfo Castro, a 26-year-old switch-hitting infielder, to a minor league deal with a spring training invitation. First reported by MLB insider Ari Alexander, this acquisition represents something far more significant than the modest headlines suggest. It's a philosophical statement about how championship organizations approach roster construction in an era where one injury can derail an entire season. Let's strip away the superficial analysis and examine the substance beneath the surface. Rodolfo Castro isn't arriving in Toronto as an unknown commodity. He's accumulated 194 Major League games between the Pittsburgh Pirates and Philadelphia Phillies from 2021 through 2023. That's not a cup of coffee. That's legitimate big league seasoning. Castro has faced elite pitching. He's experienced the psychological pressure of meaningful September games. He understands the velocity difference between AAA fastballs and Major League heat. That experience creates a foundation that can't be taught in spring training or simulated in minor league environments. The 26-year-old spent all of 2025 in AAA with the Phillies organization, which superficially appears regressive. But context reveals complexity. Philadelphia's organizational depth at the major league level created a logjam that had nothing to do with Castro's abilities and everything to do with roster construction realities. Sometimes talented players need a change of scenery, a fresh environment where opportunity aligns with capability. What makes Castro particularly compelling for Toronto's specific needs is his defensive versatility. He's handled second base, third base, and shortstop throughout his professional career. In modern baseball, where roster flexibility determines competitive advantage, having a player who can credibly defend multiple premium positions without significant defensive degradation is invaluable. Why this move reveals Toronto's championship blueprint. The Blue Jays didn't stumble into this signing through desperation or random scouting reports. This represents deliberate architectural planning addressing specific vulnerabilities exposed throughout their 2024 campaign and devastating World Series loss. Depth destruction nearly derailed everything. Toronto's 2024 season became a masterclass in roster attrition. Injuries cascaded through the lineup, forcing constant reshuffling that exposed the razor-thin margin between contention and collapse. When everyday players went down, the replacements couldn't maintain competitive performance levels. Games that should have been wins became losses. A playoff position that seemed secure suddenly required desperate final week heroics. Castro provides insurance against that nightmare scenario repeating. He's not just another name on the 40-man roster. He's a capable major leaguer who can step into meaningful innings without the entire season imploding. Versatility as competitive currency. Blue Jays management has been explicit about their off-season priorities. They want positional flexibility. They want internal competition. They want options when adversity inevitably strikes. Castro delivers on every single requirement. A switch-hitting infielder who can play multiple positions isn't just depth, it's strategic depth. It's the kind of roster construction that allows managers to make optimal decisions rather than force compromises. It's the difference between saying, we need to make this work, and we have multiple good options. Competition breeds excellence. Complacency breeds failure. By bringing Castro in on a minor league deal with a spring training invitation, Toronto creates internal competition for roster spots. Nobody gets comfortable. Nobody assumes their position is guaranteed. That competitive pressure elevates performance across the entire organization. Consider the psychological impact on players currently projected for bench roles. They now know management is actively seeking upgrades. They understand that spring training performance will determine their fate. That knowledge creates urgency that translates into maximum effort and preparation. The hidden genius of minor league deals here's where casual observers fundamentally misunderstand front office strategy. Minor league deals with spring training invitations represent asymmetric risk-reward propositions that sophisticated organizations exploit relentlessly. The monetary commitment is negligible. If Castro doesn't make the opening day roster, the Blue Jays haven't sacrificed meaningful resources. They haven't blocked payroll flexibility for larger acquisitions. They haven't committed to long-term contracts that could become albatrosses. But if Castro forces his way onto the roster through exceptional spring training performance, Toronto suddenly has added a versatile switch-hitting infielder without compromising their ability to pursue premium free agents or execute significant trades. Margins matter in October championship teams understand something that mediocre organizations consistently miss. The difference between playoff success and early elimination often comes down to roster spots 23 through 26. Those players matter enormously when stars get injured, when matchup advantages need exploitation, or when defensive replacements preserve narrow leads in crucial games. Castro has demonstrated legitimate power potential during his major league tenure. Switch hitters with pop don't grow on trees. If Toronto's player development infrastructure can refine his plate approach and help him make more consistent contact, they might have discovered a genuine contributor rather than merely organizational depth. The hunger factor. Motivation as competitive advantage. There's an intangible element to this signing that sophisticated baseball minds recognize immediately. Castro is hungry in a way that comfortable, established players simply cannot replicate. He's 26 years old, right in the prime athletic window where physical tools meet professional maturity. He just spent an entire season in AAA watching other players receive major league opportunities while he dominated a level he'd already conquered. That creates a specific psychological state that can't be manufactured through coaching or motivation speeches. Players in Castro's position have everything to prove and nothing to lose. They're not comfortable. They're not satisfied. They're fighting for their professional lives. And that desperation often translates into maximum effort and performance that exceeds raw talent evaluations. The Blue Jays are betting that Castro's hunger will push him to extract every ounce of his capability during spring training and beyond. Championship organizations understand how to harness that motivation. They create environments where driven players can thrive, where internal competition elevates everyone, and where opportunities are earned through performance rather than given through reputation. Strategic context. How this fits Toronto's larger vision. This signing represents just the opening move in what promises to be an active, potentially franchise-defining offseason for Toronto. The Blue Jays are operating in a brutally competitive American League East, where the margin between playoff teams and disappointment is measured in single-digit wins. By addressing depth and versatility early, the Blue Jays position themselves for aggressive action in other areas. They can pursue elite starting pitching or premium outfield, help knowing they've already shored up infield depth. They can take calculated risks elsewhere because they've created organizational safety nets. Smart front offices think in terms of comprehensive roster construction rather than individual signings evaluated in isolation. Castro isn't the solution to Toronto's championship aspirations by himself, but he's a puzzle piece. Combined with other strategic acquisitions, he contributes to building a roster capable of withstanding the inevitable adversity of a 162-game marathon. The American League East remains baseball's most competitive division. The Yankees aren't going anywhere. The Orioles are ascending. The Rays continue maximizing limited resources. The Red Sox are attempting to resurge. Every organization is searching for edges, hoping to find the combination that unlocks October success. In that environment, depth signings like Castro aren't luxuries, they're absolute necessities. The difference between advancing in the playoffs and watching from home often comes down to whether your 25th roster spot can contribute meaningful innings when called upon. Now comes the compelling part, watching Castro compete for a roster spot when spring training arrives in February. He'll be battling against other organizational depth options, trying to prove he deserves to break camp with the major league club. That competition will be fierce, and it absolutely should be. The Blue Jays need players who can handle pressure and perform when everything is on the line. Castro possesses the tools, switch-hitting ability, defensive versatility, legitimate power potential, and major league experience. He has the motivation. A full season in AAA creates hunger that comfortable players cannot match. The question becomes whether he can synthesize everything when opportunity arrives. Can he show enough in spring training to force management's hand? Can he demonstrate that he's not just organizational depth, but a legitimate contributor who makes the roster better? Those questions will be answered over the coming months. But the Blue Jays have positioned themselves brilliantly. They've added a motivated player with genuine upside at minimal cost. They've created internal competition that will elevate performance across the roster. They've addressed a specific need exposed by last season's injury cascade. That's smart, sophisticated baseball operations, regardless of whether the signing generates headlines or social media buzz. Final analysis: small moves, championship implications. The Rodolfo Castro signing won't dominate sports talk radio. It won't trend on Twitter. Casual fans might not even notice it happened. But make absolutely no mistake, this is precisely the type of move that separates well-run organizations from mediocre ones. Championship rosters aren't built solely through blockbuster trades and nine-figure free agent contracts. They're constructed through dozens of smaller decisions that collectively create depth, versatility, and organizational resilience. The Blue Jays just made one of those decisions, and it deserves recognition for what it represents: a commitment to building a roster capable of withstanding the inevitable adversity of a baseball season. Castro gets his chance to prove he belongs. The Blue Jays get a motivated infielder with legitimate upside and positional flexibility. Baseball fans get to watch whether this under-the-radar signing becomes one of those stories we reference when October arrives and rosters are tested to their absolute limits. The question isn't whether this signing alone transforms Toronto's championship odds. The question is whether the Blue Jays continue making smart, calculated moves that collectively position them for sustained success. Based on this opening salvo, they're thinking the right way. They're building the right way. They're preparing for adversity rather than hoping to avoid it. This is the kind of move that matters when the games count most, when stars are injured, when matchups demand flexibility, when one additional quality at-bat could determine playoff positioning. That's when organizations look back at February signings and recognize the difference between preparation and hope. What's your take on the Castro signing? Is he a hidden gem waiting for the right opportunity, or simply organizational depth that won't impact the major league roster? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're excited to see how Toronto's offseason unfolds, smash that like button, and let's keep this conversation rolling as the Blue Jays build toward redemption.